Okay.
Well, there's lots of fun and games going on here at the moment.
There is.
There?
You know, it's lovely, isn't it? We rely on technology, and then it all goes sort of wrong and things. Yeah, yeah. You can guess the phrase that one of my gallery crews just said in my head that I was trying not to say. Thanks for that. It's very helpful. So we're going to try and look through the papers.
Bit of a muddle through.
With the journalist Julie Bindle and A&E doctor Kishan Rees. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I know you're a huge techie, Kish, because we've done some online stuff together, haven't we?
Yeah.
And you're
some stuff about the cyber attack and other bits and bobs.
And you're really across all the tech stuff, so... Anyway, we're back to paper today.
I can work a Nokia phone fine, so if anyone needs help with that.
Nothing wrong with a Nokia phone.
No, nothing with the 1992 handsets. There you go. Let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph. And Mrs May, and we have to say, I didn't know, but Isabel pointed out earlier on, happy birthday, Prime Minister.
61
there you go,
today.
with a very nice picture. There you go. So as much as we wish her a happy birthday, don't know that she's necessarily going to have a particularly happy day as the Tory party conference kicks off.
Well, there's a big kerfuffle about student loans, and it looks like what she's trying to do, well, it's clear what she's trying to do, is to get the middle-class vote, because she's losing some of the middle-class vote. I'm not sure to whom, because I can't imagine them going for Corbyn and his administration. But she is also being compared to, there was a brilliant photograph in one of the other papers, comparing her to Margaret Thatcher on the night of the long knives, when we saw her through the car window with tears in her eyes, because they're turning against her. And so there's a lot of talk about whether or not she's going to be here in the next couple of months. But anyway, either way, she's trying to win over the students and the students' parents that do not want to be saddled with what is an outrageous debt simply for being educated.
Well, I still think they might be saddled with debt, though, in terms of it wasn't getting rid of them completely. I think it was capping them. And it's interesting, again, before the election, people were saying that, oh, you know, it's the youth vote won't come out, it won't make any impact at all. And then it was so close, and now they seem to be reactive as opposed to proactive. And this wasn't in their manifesto, but it's amazing how, I can't remember what paper it was on, but one of them, it was saying that it was more to prevent a leadership challenge and coup. So it's just more sort of political positioning.
But isn't that, I mean, in terms of being reactive, isn't that a positive thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
We always slam politicians when they change their minds on things and try to woo voters, in a sense. But isn't actually that what we want politicians to do?
That's a good point. Ultimately, I don't really care whether May believes in her heart that it's wrong for effectively private university education, because that's what we're moving towards.
Yeah.
Or whether she just decides it's a good policy because it'll mean that people like her or like the party more. I mean, as anyone who's ever heard me on this programme before will be aware, I'm not a Tory voter. But I'm also very disillusioned with the Labour administration at the moment, and I'm looking to how the opposition can actually be a bit kicked up the backside by the government. And this might be something that they pay heed to. Because, of course, we know that it was the Lib Dems that enabled the huge tuition fees and student loans to come in 2010. And students in their, you know, hundreds of thousands voted the Lib Dems in last time. And then, of course, complained when they got what they didn't want.
They didn't win a majority, though, did they, the Lib Dems? They were just in coalition, and they were just kind of, I think, a lot of the effects of austerity were tempered by the Lib Dems, because there was a report that came out in terms of the number of deaths in terms of, say, disabled people and how their benefits are being affected. There's something like 30,000 excess deaths last year, and that was in terms of health cuts and funding. So I think we're maybe seeing the true agenda.
I always think it's worth pointing. I mean, this has been mentioned by some politicians. We need to be reminded, don't we, that the big increases in tuition fees came in, as you say, post 2010. But tuition fees were introduced by the Labour government back in whenever it was, early 2000s. So.
Yeah, well, you know, at the time, Labour believed that university education was a privilege rather than a right. And the problem is that when you have that attitude, what it means is that fewer working class and otherwise marginalised young people get chance to further education. I'm still the only person in my family that's been to university. And at the time that I actually did go to university as a mature student, you know, you could still live on a small grant and with housing benefit. But now, you know, when I go into universities to teach or wherever, I see that there are students that are trying to hold on to 2 or 3 jobs and do their studies at the same time. There are single parents, you know, and there are very, very few marginalised people from marginalised communities. It's becoming the elite again.
I mean, there's also nursing students. Sorry, I mean, nursing students, they're working full shifts in hospitals. Right. They're plugging gaps. They're providing care and service. And then they've got part-time jobs as well. And they've got rid of the nursing bursary. So
and we don't need that. We really
I do think it is interesting that we're seeing the Conservative Party conference being kicked off not talking about Brexit. And it does appear like Theresa May has maybe learnt the lesson of the election, returning back to what she came out and said outside the steps of Number 10, which was that she wanted this party to be about everybody. And it seems that she's kind of remembered the youth vote.
Boris was
perhaps
talking
a little
about
bit too late.
Brexit, because he's coming out with his red lines, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in another segment. But
let's actually, because which paper would we? Oh, here we go. So if we have a look at the Mail on Sunday, and obviously the focus on the headline is tuition fees. That's going to be a big talking point today. But the fact is, head off a Tory coup. Now, this is what I can't quite get my head round. If you're a Conservative MP or a Conservative Party member, I'd love to hear from you today at Sky Stephen on Twitter, at Sunrise as well. In terms of holding on, people who are trying to push a coup, and you've got to look at Boris Johnson in all of this, if he gets his way and becomes Conservative Party, he's going to be leader of the opposition, isn't he? Because if in one way or another it ends up forcing a general election, they'll be out. So why are they not just backing? Why are they not backing?
The last general election was an absolute disaster in terms of the campaign that they had, and I don't know. I think you've got to be. Does lightning strike twice? Will they run such a bad election, and will it be so close? So I don't know. I mean, you can't.
It's all about that term momentum, isn't it? Which Labour has, Jeremy Corbyn seems to have at the moment.
Well, yes, but you know, when Labour did better than they were expected to, you know, that was clearly that the young vote had come out. And also it was a vote against the cruelty of the Tory policies, particularly around benefits and disability and the like. But the whole mess of Brexit means that we now have an opposition party that is very, you know, pro-Brexit, and the Tories who are largely anti-Brexit. So
I don't know if that's a fair analogy.
I think it is.
I should say.
I mean, there's no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that Corbyn and his inner cabal all wanted to leave the EU. And, you know, it was obviously a huge mistake, in my view, that Cameron gambled with this issue.
Absolutely.
Taking the country to a referendum on something you shouldn't ever have a referendum on.
Why not?
Like the death penalty.
Well, I think if you have a referendum, as long as they inform people fairly and give people both sides of the argument and let people decide, which they didn't, because they spent, I think, £9 million on a leaflet that was just putting out the positive view of staying in and not giving people the facts. And a lot of people were upset with that, and they protested, and they said they wanted to leave as a result. I'm not convinced lots of people know exactly what they voted for. And we still don't even know, do we?
But this is, no, we don't, because we can't know ahead of negotiations. You can't negotiate before you decide you're leaving. But all of this, I mean, obviously you two are both Remainers in that sense. Lots of people at home are Leavers. And the majority of people voted, whether you think it's right or wrong, whether you think they were informed or ill-informed, most people wanted to get out.
I think there's potential benefits of leaving, don't get me wrong, but it depends on how those negotiations are carried out. And I look at them, how it's being played out in the media, and you've got the Foreign Secretary undermining the PM before Tory party conference season. You kind of think, well, are they really? It just looks a bit concerning.
People, you know, a lot of Remoaners say, don't they, democracy didn't end on the 23rd of June last year. What about if we held it again? They argue most people would want to stay now.
Best of three.
Keep on breaking a coin.
I'm against
it's not going to happen.
Much as I'm desperate to remain in the EU for all kinds of reasons, I would be against that. We've had the vote, and the vote should stand, and that's democracy. But it's true. Some of a couple of the tabloid newspapers were hell-bent on misinforming people about the EU and its role.
Well, look, your views on that, of course, always welcome. I know they'll come in this morning, which is a good thing. We'll see you two in a moment, but we'll find another paper to talk about for you. Stay with us. So we're into the papers with Julie and with Kish. Now, this is a lot of... Someone said to me yesterday, we were talking about getting flights and things, and they said, oh, I really like flying with Monarch. Maybe not for much longer.
Yeah.
It's having this sort of rescue deal again, fourth time in a number of months.
And you wonder how much more cash needs to be injected to help it, properly on its way. Obviously, the Civil Aviation Authority is having quite a time of it at the moment, what with Ryanair and now Monarch. But there are 100,000 tourists who are trapped over in Spain and Turkey and Italy or wherever Monarch flies to, maybe even further away, who don't know how they're getting home and on what aircraft. So,
well, they're not, but they're not in that position yet.
Well, hopefully not. I mean, today it will be decided whether or not they're going to be given another cash injection. But it's a bit grim, isn't it? I mean, I book a lot of flights, I do lots of travelling, and I sometimes, decide to sort of err on the side of caution and go for one of the bigger airlines rather than the kind of cheaper airlines. And often it's actually the national airlines that let you down and are delayed, cancelled, and of course there's nothing you can do about it. I remember going to the airport 2 or 3 weeks ago to get a flight to Moscow, and I was just told it's cancelled. And when I said, well, but I've got a meeting there, I was told, we'll go and stay in a hotel, you can fly tomorrow. As if you would just be doing it for a bit of fun and not needing to get... But, I mean, these people need to get home, but it'll ruin their holidays and they'll have saved all year for this, some of them.
I mean, I've had that with BA, flying to India. We actually technically left the country, told, yeah, you're really lucky, you're getting on the flight, it's fine. It was when there was some snow, I think in 2013, 2014, in January. And then we kind of all trooped background immigration, we kept on going to the terminal back and forth between the hotel and kept on cancelling it. But I think what I find really interesting by this is Ryanair have put loads of £5 flights on. Their share price has gone up as people are snapping them up.
Well, people always like a bargain. Well, it's worth pointing out with this, as things currently stand, and there we have on Twitter, Monarch is saying flights are operating as normal. But obviously, we're going to keep a very close eye on that over the next 24 hours. That's the extension they've been given at the moment. We'll see you two a little bit later on. Let's get a check on the weather for you with Isabel.